The fluorescent lights above exam room 4 buzzed like dying insects as two security guards slammed Emily Carter against the corridor wall. Her badge, E. Carter, RN, hit the linoleum with a plastic crack that echoed down the empty hallway. "You're done here," the older guard growled, his breath hot with stale coffee. "Hospital policy. You don't question doctors." Emily didn't resist. She'd learned a long time ago that silence was a weapon too. Through the double doors behind them, she could hear Dr. Marcus Holloway's voice rising in pitch, barking orders that made no medical sense. The patient, a 52-year-old construction worker, was crashing, and Holloway was treating textbook cardiac arrest when the symptoms screamed something else entirely. She'd tried to tell him, once. That's when he'd called security. Now, as her supervisor, Janet Kowalski, appeared at the end of the hall with a termination folder tucked under her arm, Emily heard it. The low rumble of heavy engines. Not ambulances. Deeper. Military. Outside the ER entrance, 3 black Chevy Suburbans skidded to a stop, their tires screaming. Men in tactical gear poured out, and someone was shouting coordinates into a radio. Janet's face went white. Emily stayed perfectly still against the wall, her pulse steady, watching, because she knew something they didn't. If you want to see how this story ends, how the people who tried to break her are about to learn exactly who Emily Carter really is, stay until the very last word. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. And hit that like button, because what happens next? Nobody sees coming. 3 weeks earlier, Riverside General Hospital had been Emily Carter's quiet refuge. She worked nights in the ER, took the shifts no one wanted, and kept her head down. 28 years old, small-framed, with dark hair usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, she looked like every other overworked nurse in an understaffed urban hospital. That was the point. "Carter, get me vitals on bed 7, Dr. Marcus Holloway snapped without looking up from his tablet. He was 43, silver at the temples, with the kind of confidence that came from never being questioned. "And don't take all night." Emily grabbed the BP cuff and moved to the curtained bay where a 19-year-old college student sat clutching her stomach. Appendicitis, probably. Emily checked the readout. 142/88. Elevated but stable. "You're doing fine," Emily said quietly to the girl. "We'll get you taken care of." The girl's mother, hovering nearby, managed a weak smile. "Thank you." Emily returned to the nurses' station where Holloway stood talking to Dr. Patricia Nguyen, the ER attending. Nguyen was brilliant, meticulous, and utterly exhausted after a 16-hour shift. "BP's high but stable," Emily reported. "Rebound tenderness in the lower right quadrant. I'd recommend—" "I didn't ask for your clinical opinion," Holloway cut her off. His eyes stayed on his screen. "I asked for vitals." Nguyen glanced at Emily with something like sympathy, but said nothing. "Hospital politics." Emily set the chart down. "Noted." Across the unit, 2 other nurses, Shanice Williams and Kevin Patel, exchanged looks. Shanice, a 10-year veteran with kids at home and zero tolerance for nonsense, shook her head slightly. Kevin just sighed. This was normal. This was every shift. Emily Carter didn't argue, didn't push back, didn't make waves. She'd learned that lesson in places where making waves got you killed. By 2 a.m., the ER had quieted to its usual low hum of misery. A drunk driver with lacerations in Bay 3, a diabetic in crisis in Bay 5, an elderly man with pneumonia waiting for admission upstairs. Emily was restocking a crash cart when Janet Kowalski appeared. Janet was the night nursing supervisor, 56, angular, with the permanent scowl of someone who'd spent 30 years managing staff shortages and impossible standards. "Carter, I need you on double coverage tomorrow night," Janet said without preamble. Marissa called out. "That's my 4th double this month. You got a problem with that?" Emily kept her face neutral. "No." "Good." Janet walked away, heels clicking on tile. Shanice appeared beside her a moment later, rolling her eyes. "Girl, you gotta push back sometimes. They'll work you into the ground. I'm fine." "You're a doormat." Emily didn't respond. Shanice didn't know. None of them did. 4 nights later, everything started to crack. It was a Saturday, which meant the ER was flooded. Motor vehicle accidents, bar fights, domestic violence cases, the usual weekend chaos. Emily had been on for 11 hours straight, no break, running on black coffee and muscle memory. Bed 9 came in just after midnight. A 41-year-old man named David Greer presenting with severe chest pain radiating down his left arm. Classic MY symptoms. EKG showed ST elevation. Holloway ordered morphine, nitro, and a cardiology consult. But something felt wrong. Emily studied the monitor. The rhythm wasn't quite right. The pain pattern didn't fit, and when she pressed on Greer's abdomen, he winced, sharp, localized. She caught Holloway in the hallway. "Doctor, I think we should rule out aortic dissection before we—" "You think?" Holloway turned on her, his voice loud enough to carry across the unit. "You think? Since when do nurses make diagnostic calls? I'm just suggesting You're just a nurse. Stay in your lane, Carter." Emily felt the eyes on her. The other nurses. The residents. Even a patient's family member watching through a gap in the curtains. She stepped back. Understood. Holloway ordered the nitro anyway. 2 minutes later, Greer's blood pressure dropped like a stone. 80/40. Then 60/palp. "He's crashing!" Kevin shouted. Wynne rushed in, took one look at the monitor, and her face went pale. "Stop the nitro now. This is a dissection, not an MI. If we'd kept pushing vasodilators—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. They stabilized Greer barely and rushed him to CT. Confirmed. Type A aortic dissection. Another 5 minutes on nitro, and he'd have bled out internally. Emily Carter had been right, and Dr. Marcus Holloway knew it. Later in the break room, Shanice found her sitting in the dark with a cold cup of coffee. "You saved that guy's life," Shanice said. Emily shrugged. "Nguyen caught it. After you flagged it, Holloway's going to have to eat crow." But that wasn't how it worked. Emily had been in systems long enough to know people didn't admit mistakes. They reassigned blame. 2 days later, Janet called her into the supervisor's office. Emily stood in front of the desk, still in her scrubs, a coffee stain on her sleeve from a patient who'd knocked her cup during a panic attack. "We've had concerns raised about your conduct," Janet said, her tone flat and official. "Concerns. Dr. Holloway reports that you've been overstepping your scope, making diagnostic suggestions, questioning physician judgment." Emily's jaw tightened. "I was trying to prevent a patient from dying. That's not your job. Your job is to follow orders, even when the orders are wrong." Janet's eyes went cold. "Careful, Carter." Silence filled the small office. Outside, a stretcher rattled past. Someone was shouting about a GSW coming in hot. "You're suspended pending review," Janet continued. 2 weeks, unpaid. If there are further incidents, termination is on the table. Emily felt the heat rise in her chest, the old instinct to fight back, but she swallowed it down. She'd survived worse than bureaucratic warfare. "Fine. Leave your badge at the desk." Emily turned and walked out. In the hallway, Kevin and Shanice were waiting, but she brushed past them without a word. She didn't trust herself to speak. She unclipped her badge at the nurse's station, set it down with a soft click, and headed for the exit. Behind her, Holloway was laughing with a resident about something. He didn't even glance her way. That was Tuesday. On Thursday night, the convoy arrived. Emily wasn't supposed to be there. She'd been suspended, sent home, told to stay away. But she'd left her stethoscope in her locker, her only good one, the one she'd carried through 3 deployments, and she wasn't about to leave it behind. So she came back after hours, used the side entrance staff never locked, and slipped into the locker room. She was shoving the stethoscope into her bag when she heard the sirens. Not 1 or 2, a lot. Then the engines. Deep, rumbling, unmistakable. She moved to the window. 3 black Suburbans, flanked by 2 police motorcycles, were pulling up to the ER entrance. Men in tactical gear, no uniforms, no insignia, were already moving, setting a perimeter. Emily's stomach dropped. She knew what this was, a high-value transport, military or federal. Someone critically injured who couldn't go to a military hospital for operational reasons. Someone whose survival was a matter of national security. And Riverside General, for all its bureaucratic dysfunction, had the only Level 1 trauma center within 50 miles. She should have left, should have walked out the side door and gone home. But old habits died hard. Emily moved through the back corridors, past storage closets and break rooms, until she reached the observation window overlooking Trauma Bay 1. They were already wheeling the patient in. Male, late 50s, unconscious, blood soaking through field dressings on his chest and abdomen. 2 IV lines running wide open. A medic in combat fatigues was doing compressions, and standing in the hallway, coordinating with hospital security, was a man in a dark suit with a military bearing and a radio clipped to his belt. Colonel, probably. Maybe higher. Inside the trauma bay, Holloway was already barking orders. Nguyen was scrubbing in. 2 residents scrambled to get lines placed. Emily watched the monitor, heart rate erratic, BP dropping. O2 sat in the low 80s. Then she saw the wound pattern. Her breath caught. This wasn't a gunshot. It wasn't shrapnel. It was a blast injury, compression trauma from an explosion. The kind that shredded internal organs without leaving obvious external damage. The kind that looked survivable until the patient bled out internally in the next 10 minutes. She'd seen it before, handled it before. In places Riverside General Hospital had never heard of, Holloway was treating it like a standard penetrating trauma. Packing the wound, pushing fluids, prepping for exploratory surgery. All wrong. Emily's hands clenched against the window frame. She watched Holloway probe the chest wound, watched him order another unit of blood, watched the BP drop further, and then she watched the patient flatline. The monitor screamed. Compression started. Holloway called for epi, called for the defibrillator, called for more hands. But no one in that room knew what they were really dealing with. No one except the woman watching through the glass. The military officer in the hallway turned sharply, his radio crackling. His face went hard. He started toward the trauma bay doors, pushing past a nurse, and then he stopped. His eyes scanned the hallway and locked on Emily. For a second, neither of them moved. Then he spoke into his radio, low and clipped. "Get me a roster. Everyone with combat medical experience. Now." Emily's pulse kicked up a notch. Inside the trauma bay, Holloway was losing control. Compressions weren't catching. The resident fumbled the intubation. Nguyen called for a chest tube, but the patient's condition was deteriorating faster than they could respond. The officer stepped into the room. His voice cut through the chaos like a knife. "Who here has treated blast compression trauma?" Silence. Holloway looked up, flustered. "This is a penetrating injury." "It's not." The officer's tone allowed no argument. "This is internal compression from a shock wave. If you treat it like a GSW, he dies. So I'll ask again. Who here knows what they're doing?" No one answered. The officer's jaw tightened. He turned back toward the hallway and saw Emily still standing at the observation window. Their eyes met again. He moved toward her, fast. "You," he said. "You were watching. You see what's happening in there?" Emily hesitated. She wasn't staff. She was suspended. She had no authority, no clearance, no right to be here. But the man on that table was dying. "Yes," she said quietly. "You know what this is?" She nodded. "Then get in there." "I'm not cleared to some." "I don't care." He held the door open. "Move." Emily's heart hammered. Every instinct told her to walk away. This wasn't her fight. This wasn't her hospital anymore. But that monitor was still screaming. She pushed through the doors. The room went quiet. Holloway spun around, his face flushing red. "What the hell are you doing in here? You're suspended." Emily ignored him. She moved to the table, eyes on the patient. "Stop compressions." "Who the hell do you think?" "Stop. Compressions." Her voice was calm, but it carried a weight that made the resident freeze mid-compression. She placed her hands on the patient's chest, palpating carefully. Checked the abdomen. Noted the distension, the rigidity. "He's got internal hemorrhaging from ruptured vasculature," she said. "The blast wave caused shearing injuries to the aorta and possibly the liver. You keep pushing fluids, you're just filling the peritoneal cavity. He needs an emergency laparotomy, vascular clamps on the aorta, and direct pressure on the hepatic vessels. And you need to do it in the next 3 minutes or he's gone." Holloway stared at her. "You don't have the authority." The officer stepped forward. "She does now. Move." For a moment no one breathed. Then Nguyen, her face pale but focused, nodded. "She's right. I've seen one case like this. It killed the patient in 8 minutes. Carter, what do you need?" Emily's training kicked in. The old wiring, the muscle memory from operating in tents with mortar fire overhead and blood on every surface. Scalpel, clamps, 4 units of O-neg on standby. Someone call surgery and tell them we're coming up hot. And someone with steady hands on compressions. Clean, 30 per minute, no breaks. Kevin stepped forward. I've got compressions. Emily locked eyes with him. Don't stop unless I tell you. Got it. She took the scalpel from the tray, her hands perfectly steady, and made the first incision. Holloway took a step back, his face slack with shock. The room moved. Blood welled up as Emily opened the chest cavity, her movements precise, controlled. She reached in, felt for the aorta, found the tear. Clamp, now. Nguyen slapped it into her hand. Emily applied pressure, clamped the vessel, and the bleeding slowed. Liver next. Suction here. Patel, more pressure on that line. On it. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2. The monitor beeped. Faint, irregular, but there. I've got a pulse, Kevin said, breathless. Don't let up. We're not out yet. Emily worked in silence, her focus absolute. The room around her faded. No Holloway, no officer, no politics. Just the patient. Just the work. 3 minutes later, the bleeding was controlled. The patient was stable enough to move. Surgery's ready, Nguyen said, her voice tight with awe. They're taking him now. Emily stepped back, peeling off gloves slick with blood. Her hands were shaking now, just slightly. The adrenaline crashing. The officer was watching her. Where did you learn that? Emily met his gaze. Her voice was quiet. Kandahar. Mosul. Raqqa. The room went still. Holloway's face had gone gray. The officer pulled out his phone, made a call, his eyes never leaving Emily. Run a clearance check. Carter, Emily. Last military assignment. He paused, waiting. Syria, Emily said. Combat medic, special operations support. His expression shifted. You're that Carter. She didn't answer. He hung up, then turned to Janet, who had just appeared in the doorway, her face frozen in shock. This woman was suspended? He asked, his voice dangerously soft. Janet's mouth opened, closed. She just saved the life of a federal asset in a trauma bay with no prep time. He stepped closer to Janet. And you sent her home? There were complaints. From who? Janet's eyes flicked toward Holloway. The officer followed her gaze. His expression hardened. Doctor, I'll need your full report on the incident that led to Ms. Carter's suspension. On my desk by 0800. Holloway swallowed. I don't report to... You do now. The officer turned back to Emily. You're reinstated, effective immediately, full clearance, and I'll be speaking with hospital administration in the morning. He paused. We'll be in touch. Then he walked out, his boots echoing down the corridor. The trauma bay was silent. Emily stood there, blood drying on her scrubs, her heart still racing. She looked at Holloway, then at Janet, then at the empty doorway where the patient had just been wheeled through. Shanice was the first to speak. Girl, what the hell just happened? Emily didn't answer. She stripped off her gown, dropped it in the biohazard bin, and walked out of the room. But as she passed Holloway, she stopped, just for a second. He would have died, she said quietly. If you'd kept going your way. Holloway said nothing. Emily kept walking. Outside in the cool night air, she leaned against the brick wall and finally let herself breathe. Her hands were still trembling, not from fear, from the weight of it, of being seen again. She'd spent 3 years trying to disappear, to be no one, to just survive in the ordinary world. But some things didn't stay buried. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Ms. Carter, this is Major General Booth. We need to talk. Emily closed her eyes. I'm out. I've been out for 3 years. I know, but the man you just saved? He's the deputy director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the people who tried to kill him are still out there. Silence stretched between them. We need your help, Booth said. And after tonight, I think you know you can't walk away from this. Emily looked back at the ER entrance where Holloway was visible through the glass, pacing, his phone pressed to his ear. I'll think about it, she said, and hung up. But she already knew the answer, because the moment that patient had flatlined, the moment that officer had asked if anyone knew what they were doing, Emily Carter had stopped pretending. And once you stopped pretending, there was no going back. Inside the hospital, alarms were already starting to sound. Not medical alarms, security alarms. And somewhere in the administrative wing, Janet Kowalski was opening an email marked urgent with a federal seal at the top. The subject line read, "Immediate investigation, Emily Carter." Whatever Emily had walked away from 3 years ago, it was about to walk right back into Riverside General Hospital. And this time, no one was going to ignore her. The email arrived at 4:47 a.m., marked with enough digital flags to trigger automatic alerts across 3 federal databases. Janet Kowalski sat in her office with the lights off, staring at the screen, her coffee going cold in her hand. The federal seal was real. The signature at the bottom belonged to someone whose name she'd only seen in news briefings. She read it twice, then a third time, but the words didn't change. Effective immediately, all personnel actions regarding Emily J. Carter are suspended pending full investigation. Any retaliation, direct or indirect, will be treated as obstruction of a federal inquiry. Hospital administration is directed to provide complete employment records, incident reports, and witness statements within 48 hours. Janet's hands were shaking. She set the cup down before she spilled it. Across the hospital, in the surgical wing, the deputy director was still in the OR. Stable, but critical. The surgeons working on him had no idea who he was. They only knew that armed men in tactical gear were stationed outside the operating room and that nobody, absolutely nobody, was allowed near the recovery wing without clearance. Emily Carter sat in the hospital parking lot, her truck engine ticking as it cooled. She hadn't gone home, hadn't moved. She'd just been sitting there for the past 20 minutes, watching the sunrise bleed orange across the skyline, trying to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do next. Her phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. She let it ring. Then it buzzed with a text. "We're not going away." Emily typed back, "Neither am I." She got out of the truck, slammed the door, and walked back into Riverside General through the staff entrance. She still had blood on her shoes. Nobody stopped her. The ER was quieter now, the overnight chaos winding down into the early morning lull. A few stragglers in the waiting room. A janitor mopping near the vending machines. Kevin was at the nurse's station, filling out charts, his eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion. He looked up when Emily approached. "You're still here?" "Apparently. Holloway's been in Janet's office for the last hour. Doors closed, voices loud." Emily grabbed a tablet from the charging station. "Good." Kevin leaned closer, lowering his voice. "What the hell happened in there? I mean, I've worked with you for 2 years, and I've never seen you move like that. It was like watching someone flip a switch." Emily didn't look at him. "I did what needed doing. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." She logged into the system, pulling up the patient board. Her credentials were active again. Someone had reinstated her in the last 30 minutes. No explanation. Just a green check mark where a red suspension notice had been. Shanice appeared from the break room, a granola bar half unwrapped in her hand. She took one look at Emily and stopped mid-chew. "Girl, you look like you've been through a war." Emily almost laughed. "Something like that. They're saying the guy you saved was military, high level. Is that true?" "I can't talk about it." Shanice's eyebrows shot up. "Can't or won't?" "Both." Before Shanice could press further, the double doors to the administrative wing swung open and Dr. Marcus Holloway stepped out. His face was pale, his jaw tight. He saw Emily standing at the nurse's station and froze. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Holloway crossed the floor, his footsteps sharp and deliberate. Kevin and Shanice instinctively stepped back. "You think you're clever," Holloway said, his voice low and venomous. "Pulling strings, getting federal agents involved." Emily met his gaze without flinching. "I didn't pull anything. You did this to yourself. I'm the senior physician in this ER. I've been practicing medicine for 20 years. You're a nurse who got lucky." "Lucky?" Emily's tone was flat. "That man would be dead if I'd been lucky. He's alive because I know what I'm doing." Holloway's face flushed. "You overstepped. You violated protocol. You had no authority. I had more authority than you did, because I actually knew what I was looking at. You're going to regret this." Emily took a step closer. Her voice dropped, quiet and cold. "The only person who's going to regret anything is you. Because when that federal inquiry gets done digging through your records, they're going to find every corner you cut, every patient you misdiagnosed, every mistake you covered up. And you know what? I won't have to say a word. The truth will do it for me. Holloway's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Emily turned and walked away. Behind her, she heard Shanice whisper, "Damn." By 7 a.m., the hospital grapevine was on fire. Nurses whispered in break rooms. Residents traded rumors between rounds. Security guards compared notes near the loading dock. The official story was vague. A VIP patient had been brought in under federal escort. A suspended nurse had performed an emergency procedure, and now there were people in suits walking the halls with badges that didn't say FBI or DEA or anything anyone recognized. The unofficial story was wilder. Some said Emily Carter had been Special Forces. Others claimed she was CIA. One particularly creative rumor suggested she'd been a black ops surgeon who'd disappeared after a mission went sideways. None of them were entirely wrong. Emily ignored all of it. She went back to work, triaged a sprained ankle, started an IV on a dehydrated teenager, checked labs on a pneumonia case. She moved through the ER like nothing had changed, even though everything had. At 9:15 a.m., a man in a dark gray suit walked into the ER and asked for her by name. Emily was restocking a suture tray when Kevin found her. "There's a guy asking for you. Says it's official business." She didn't look up. "Tell him I'm busy." "He's not asking." Emily set down the suture kit and followed Kevin to the waiting area. The man was mid-40s, square-jawed, with the kind of posture that screamed military even in civilian clothes. He had a leather folio tucked under one arm. "Miss Carter," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Agent Daniels, DIA. We need to talk." Emily didn't take the hand. "I'm on shift." "This won't take long." "Then say what you need to say." Daniels glanced around at the waiting room. A mother with 2 crying kids, an elderly man asleep in a chair, a teenager scrolling on his phone. "Not here." Emily led him to an empty exam room and shut the door. "You've got 5 minutes." Daniels set the folio on the counter and opened it. Inside were photos, surveillance images, incident reports. Emily recognized some of them. Damascus, Mosul, a field hospital outside Raqqa. "You were part of Joint Task Force Vanguard," Daniels said. "Embedded combat medic with special operations. 3 deployments, 14 commendations. You saved more lives under fire than most surgeons do in a career." Emily crossed her arms. "That was a long time ago." "Not that long. You separated 3 years ago. Honorable discharge. Relocated to Riverside under a civilian identity. Kept a low profile. No one here knows who you were." "And I'd like to keep it that way." Daniels pulled out another photo. This one was recent. A man in his late 50s, gray hair, sharp features. Emily recognized him from the trauma bay. "Deputy Director Alan Mercer," Daniels said. "He was targeted 2 nights ago in what we believe was a coordinated assassination attempt. The explosion was meant to kill him. It almost did." "And you think I can help you how?" "You already did. You kept him alive." Daniels leaned against the counter. "But the people who want him dead? They're not going to stop. And right now, Mercer's in a hospital bed with a target on his back." Emily's jaw tightened. "You've got armed guards outside his room. Guards can be compromised. Hospitals can be infiltrated. We need someone on the inside, someone with medical clearance, tactical awareness, and a very specific skill set." He paused. "Someone like you." "I'm not interested." "You don't have a choice." Emily's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" Daniels straightened. Mercer was working on an intelligence operation that could expose a network of hostile actors embedded in domestic infrastructure. If he dies, that operation dies with him. National security isn't optional, Ms. Carter. "Then send in your own people." "Our people don't have hospital credentials." "You do." Daniels pulled out a folder and set it on the counter. "This is a temporary federal commission. It gives you authority to act as a protective asset within this facility. You'll continue your regular duties, but you'll also monitor Mercer's condition and report any anomalies." Emily stared at the folder. "And if I say no? Then I'll have to wonder why someone with your background is so eager to stay invisible." Daniel's tone was mild, but the implication was clear. "People don't usually hide unless they're running from something." Emily's pulse kicked up. She wasn't running. Not exactly, but she'd left her old life for reasons that didn't belong in a government file. She picked up the folder. How long? 72 hours. After that, Mercer will be transferred to a secure facility. And if something happens in those 72 hours, then you do what you did last night. You keep him alive. Daniels walked to the door, then stopped. One more thing. The attack wasn't random. Whoever tried to kill Mercer knew his route, his schedule, his security detail. That kind of intel doesn't come from the outside. Emily's stomach turned. You're saying it was an inside job? I'm saying trust no one. Daniels opened the door. That includes the people in this hospital. He left. Emily stood alone in the exam room, holding the folder. Inside were Mercer's medical charts, security protocols, and a single handwritten note. They're still watching. She shoved the folder into her bag and walked back out into the ER. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Emily worked her shift, kept her head down, and tried to ignore the weight of the federal commission burning a hole in her bag. She checked on Mercer twice, both times under the guise of assisting the ICU nurse. He was stable but sedated, still too weak to talk. The armed guards outside his door didn't acknowledge her, but she felt their eyes tracking her every move. At noon, Janet Kowalski summoned her to the administrative office. Emily climbed the stairs to the second floor, her mind running through a dozen possible scenarios. Termination, retaliation, legal threats. None of them good. Janet's office was cramped and windowless, stacked with binders and outdated policy manuals. Janet sat behind her desk, her expression unreadable. Sit, she said. Emily remained standing. I'm good, Janet sighed. Fine, I'll make this quick. The suspension has been lifted. Your record is being reviewed by an external audit team. You're cleared to work pending the outcome. That's it? No. Janet's voice hardened. I've been instructed by federal authorities to ensure you have full access to patient care areas, including ICU and surgical recovery. I don't know what you did or who you know, but this is highly irregular. Emily kept her face neutral. Noted. I'm also required to inform you that any complaints filed against you have been placed under seal, including Dr. Holloway's. That got Emily's attention. Seal? Meaning they're not public record. Meaning I can't act on them. Janet leaned back in her chair, her frustration barely concealed. You've got powerful friends, Carter. I hope you know what you're doing. I do. Janet's eyes narrowed. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've dragged this hospital into something way over our heads. Emily turned to leave, then stopped. You suspended me for doing my job. You let Holloway treat staff like garbage for years. You turned a blind eye to every corner cut, every mistake swept under the rug. Don't act like I'm the problem. She walked out before Janet could respond. Downstairs, the ER was starting to fill again. Afternoon rush. Car accidents, construction injuries, the usual chaos. Emily was charting a laceration repair when Shanice pulled her aside. There's something you need to see, Shanice said, her voice tight. Emily followed her to the staff lounge. On the TV mounted in the corner, a local news broadcast was running. The anchor's face was serious. Explosion in downtown Riverside early this morning has been linked to an ongoing federal investigation. Authorities have not released details, but sources say the target may have been a high-ranking government official. The incident is being treated as a possible act of terrorism. The screen cut to footage of a scorched vehicle, police tape, federal agents, and windbreakers. Emily's blood ran cold. That's 2 blocks from here, Shanice said. You think it's connected? Emily didn't answer. She was already pulling out her phone, dialing the number Daniels had left. He picked up on the first ring. You saw the news. What the hell is going on? Secondary attack. They're probing our defenses, testing response times. They're coming for him. We know. Then get him out of here. We can't move him yet. Too unstable. Another 48 hours minimum. Emily's grip tightened on the phone. You're using him as bait. Daniels didn't deny it. We're using every asset we have, including you. I didn't sign up for this. You signed up the moment you saved his life. Daniel's tone was flat, almost bored. You're in this now, Carter. Deal with it. The line went dead. Emily stared at the phone, her heart pounding. Shanice was watching her. What's going on? I can't tell you. Bullshit. You're in over your head. Emily met her eyes. Then stay out of it. She walked out of the lounge, her mind racing. 48 hours. 2 days to keep a federal asset alive in a hospital with compromised security, unknown hostiles, and a staff that had no idea what they were sitting on. She needed a plan. By evening, the ER had quieted again. Emily was restocking an IV cart when Kevin approached, his face pale. "There's a guy in bed 12, he said. "Says he's here for chest pain, but something's off." Emily followed him to the curtain bay. The patient was male, early 30s, muscular build, wearing jeans and a leather jacket. His vitals were normal, no visible distress, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp. Emily stepped inside. "What brings you in tonight?" The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Chest pain. Thought I should get it checked." "When did it start?" "Couple hours ago." Emily pulled out her stethoscope. "Let me take a listen." She pressed the diaphragm to his chest. His heartbeat was steady, strong, no murmurs, no irregularities. But when she met his gaze, something cold slithered down her spine. He wasn't here for chest pain. "Everything looks fine," she said, pulling back. "I'll have the doctor take a look." "No rush?" The man's smile widened. "I've got time." Emily left the bay and found Kevin. "Call security, quietly." "What? Why?" "Just do it." She moved to the nurse's station and pulled up the patient's chart. No prior visits, no medical history, no insurance on file. He'd walked in off the street. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. He's not alone. Emily's blood turned to ice. She scanned the ER. 2 men in the waiting room, both wearing ball caps, both watching the hallway. A woman near the vending machines, her purse sitting too stiffly on her lap. They were already inside. Emily's hand went to her pocket, where the federal commission folder was still tucked away. She pulled it out, found Daniel's direct line, and dialed. "We've got a problem," she said the moment he picked up. "How bad?" "They're here, in the ER. At least 3, maybe more." A pause. Then, "Lock down ICU, now." Emily was already moving. She crossed the floor, grabbed Shanice by the arm. "I need you to pull the fire alarm." Shanice stared at her. "What?" "Just do it, right now." "Emily, if this is some kind of... Do it!" Shanice ran to the nearest alarm and pulled the lever. The siren screamed to life. Overhead lights flashed. Patients began to stir, confused and alarmed. And in bed 12, the man with the chest pain stood up, his hand moving toward his jacket. Emily didn't wait. She hit the panic button under the nurse's station, triggering a hospital-wide security alert. Then she ran for the ICU. The hallway was chaos. Nurses evacuating patients, orderlies rushing wheelchairs, security guards converging from every direction. Emily pushed through, her heart hammering, and burst through the ICU doors. The armed guards outside Mercer's room had their weapons drawn. "Lock it down," Emily shouted. "Nobody gets in. Nobody." One of the guards grabbed his radio. "We've got movement on the east stairwell. Multiple contacts." Emily's stomach dropped. They weren't just in the ER. They were everywhere. And somewhere in the chaos, a gunshot rang out. The gunshot came from the east stairwell, sharp and unmistakable, even through the wail of the fire alarm. Emily's body moved before her mind caught up, old training kicking in, muscle memory from places where hesitation meant death. She grabbed the nearest guard by the vest. "How many rounds you carrying?" He blinked, startled. "3 mags. Why? Give me one. I can't just..." Emily's voice dropped to a command tone that left no room for argument. "You've got 2 shooters minimum coming up those stairs and maybe more behind them. I need that magazine or we're all dead. Your call." The guard's hand went to his belt. He slapped a magazine into her palm. Emily checked the weight. 30 rounds, full metal jacket, and shoved it into her scrub pocket. She wasn't armed, had no weapon, but knowing she had ammunition gave her options she didn't have 10 seconds ago. The second guard was on his radio, his voice clipped and professional. "Shots fired, east stairwell, 3rd floor. We need backup at ICU stat. Repeat, ICU is under threat." The radio crackled back. "Security is engaged on 1st floor. Multiple hostiles. SWAT's been notified, but ETA is 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Emily's jaw tightened. In 8 minutes, Mercer would be dead and half the ICU staff with him. She turned to the nurse stationed at the ICU desk, a young woman named Brenna who looked about 3 seconds from a panic attack. Lock every room. Get patients away from doors. Anyone who can be moved, move them to the break room and back. Now. Brenna nodded, her hand shaking as she grabbed the master key card. Another gunshot. Closer this time. Then voices, shouting, commands in a language Emily didn't recognize but understood the cadence of. Military, coordinated. The first guard moved toward the stairwell door, weapon raised. Stay behind me. Emily didn't. She moved parallel to him, using the wall for cover, her eyes scanning for angles, exits, choke points. The ICU was a long corridor with patient rooms on both sides and a nurse's station in the middle. Big windows at the far end overlooking the parking lot. One main entrance, one service entrance, one emergency stairwell. They were trapped in a kill box. The stairwell door burst open. 2 men came through fast and low, dressed in street clothes but moving like operators. The first one had a pistol, suppressed. The second carried a canvas bag that could have been medical supplies or something much worse. The guard fired twice. The first man went down hard, blood spraying across the tile. The second dove behind a medication cart. Emily hit the floor as return fire ripped through the air, punching holes in the drywall above her head. She crawled toward the nurse's station, glass crunching under her knees, her breath coming in short, controlled bursts. The guard was pinned behind a door frame, trying to reload. His hands were steady, but his face was pale. This wasn't what hospital security trained for. Emily reached the station and yanked open the bottom drawer. Scalpels, syringes, a portable suture kit. Not much. She grabbed a fistful of syringes and shoved them in her pocket alongside the magazine. The second shooter popped up from behind the cart and fired 3 rounds. One caught the guard in the shoulder, spinning him around. He went down hard, his weapon clattering across the floor. Emily moved without thinking. She lunged from behind the desk, grabbed the fallen pistol, and rolled back into cover as bullets chewed up the tile where she'd just been. Her hands closed around the grip. Glock 19. 15 rounds, 1 in the chamber. She checked the safety, off, and chambered around. The shooter was advancing, confident now, his weapon trained on the guard who was clutching his shoulder and trying to crawl toward cover. Emily rose, sighted, and fired twice. Center mass. The shooter staggered, his chest blooming red, and collapsed. Silence. Just the fire alarm screaming and the ringing in Emily's ears. She moved to the downed guard. How bad? He grunted, his face twisted in pain. Through and through, missed the bone. Can you move? Yeah. Then get to Mercer's room, lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. He nodded, staggering to his feet. Emily grabbed his arm, steadied him, then pushed him toward the room. The second guard was still covering the stairwell, his weapon trained on the door. More coming? Count on it. Emily ejected the magazine from the Glock, checked the count, 13 left, and slammed it back in. They didn't send 2 guys for a federal asset. This is a breach team. The real assault's coming. As if on cue, the lights went out. Emergency backup kicked in after 3 seconds, bathing the ICU in dim red light. Emily's stomach dropped. Cutting power meant they had someone inside the hospital infrastructure, someone with access. Her phone buzzed. Daniels. We're tracking 4 additional hostiles on thermal, 2 on the second floor stairwell, 2 coming through the parking garage elevator. Where the hell is SWAT? 6 minutes out. We don't have 6 minutes. Then hold them off. Emily wanted to throw the phone. Instead, she shoved it back in her pocket and turned to the remaining guard. What's your name? Torres. You prior military, Torres? Marine Corps, infantry, 2 tours. Good. You're going to need it. Emily moved to the service entrance and pulled a crash cart across the doorway. They're going to try to flank us. We need to bottleneck them, force them into a single approach. Torres was already moving, dragging equipment, overturning gurneys to create barriers. They worked fast, building a makeshift defensive position in under 90 seconds. Emily checked her watch, 4 minutes since the first shot. Every second that passed was 1 second closer to reinforcements, or 1 second closer to dying. She could hear footsteps now, multiple sets, heavy boots on tile. Here they come, Torres said. The service door exploded inward, the lock blowing apart in a shower of metal fragments. 2 men rushed through, faster than the first team, better armed. One carried a submachine gun, compact and mean. The other had a shotgun. Torres opened fire, his rounds punching through the first man's chest. The second dove left, rolled, came up firing. Buckshot tore through the crash cart, scattering supplies. Emily leaned around the nurse's station and fired 3 times. One round caught the shooter in the hip, spinning him. He went down but didn't stop moving, dragging himself toward cover. She moved to finish him, but a burst of automatic fire from the main entrance drove her back. The third shooter, the one with the submachine gun, was laying down suppressing fire, keeping them pinned. Emily's mind raced. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. The ICU had 12 patients, most of them critical, none of them able to run. If the shooters got past her and Torres, it would be a slaughter. She needed to change the equation. Her eyes fell on the oxygen tanks lined up against the wall. Medical grade. Pressurized. Highly flammable. An idea formed. Dangerous. Possibly suicidal. But better than sitting here waiting to die. Torres, keep him busy. What are you? Emily was already moving. She grabbed one of the portable oxygen tanks, twisted the valve open, and hurled it down the corridor toward the main entrance. It hit the tile and rolled, hissing gas. The shooter saw it coming and tried to move, but Emily was faster. She fired once. The bullet hit the tank dead center. The explosion was massive, a rolling fireball that blew out windows and sent debris flying. The shockwave knocked Emily off her feet, her ears ringing, her vision blurred. When she looked up, the main entrance was a smoking ruin. The shooter was down, unmoving. The sprinkler system kicked in, dousing everything in cold water. Torres was on his feet, moving through the smoke. Holy shit! Emily pushed herself up, every muscle aching. Check the rooms, make sure no one's hurt. She turned toward Mercer's room. The door was still locked, the guard inside unharmed. Through the small window, she could see Mercer, still sedated, still breathing. Her phone buzzed. Daniels again. What the hell just happened? We saw a thermal spike. I bought us some time. Where's SWAT? 3 minutes. Hospital's in full lockdown. Local PD's setting a perimeter. They had inside help. Someone cut the power. Someone gave them access. You need to audit your entire security team. Already on it. Emily ended the call and turned back to the ICU. The sprinklers were still running, water pouring down, mixing with blood on the tile. 4 bodies. 2 guards injured. A dozen patients traumatized. And somewhere in the hospital, someone was watching. Someone who knew exactly where Mercer was. Someone who wasn't done yet. Shanice appeared in the doorway, soaked and wide-eyed. Emily, what the hell? Get out of here, now. I'm not leaving. This isn't a debate, Emily's voice cracked like a whip. Get downstairs, get to the ER, lock the doors, and don't let anyone in until the police clear it. Go. Shanice hesitated, then ran. Emily turned to Torres. How many rounds you got left? Maybe 20. Give me 10. He handed over a partial magazine. Emily reloaded, her hand steady despite the adrenaline crash starting to hit her system. In the distance, sirens wailed, getting closer. Torres was checking the bodies, making sure they stayed down. When he got to the one near the service entrance, the man Emily had shot in the hip, he stopped. This one's still breathing. Emily moved over. The man was mid-30s, dark hair, olive skin. Blood pooled beneath him from the hip wound, but he was conscious. His eyes tracked her, sharp and focused, despite the pain. She knelt beside him. Who sent you? The man smiled, blood on his teeth. You're already dead. You just don't know it. Who's paying you? He coughed, a wet rattling sound. Doesn't matter. They'll send more. And more. Until the job's done. Emily pressed her hand against his wound, making him gasp. Talk. But his eyes were already glazing over. Whatever information he had was dying with him. Torres checked for a pulse. He's gone. Emily sat back on her heels, frustration burning in her chest. They'd survived the assault, but they were no closer to knowing who was behind it. The overhead PA crackled to life. All clear on 3rd floor. SWAT teams are securing the building. All staff remain in current positions until cleared by law enforcement. Emily stood, her legs shaking. Through the shattered windows, she could see tactical teams moving across the parking lot, their rifles up, their movements precise. News helicopters circled overhead, their spotlights cutting through the smoke. Riverside General was about to be all over the national news. And Emily Carter, who'd spent 3 years trying to disappear, was about to be dragged back into the light whether she wanted it or not. The next 2 hours were a blur of federal agents, police interviews, and crime scene techs photographing every blood spatter and bullet hole. Emily sat in a plastic chair outside Mercer's room, a shock blanket draped over her shoulders, watching them work. Her hands had stopped shaking, but her mind was still running hot, replaying every decision, every shot, looking for mistakes. She'd killed 4 people tonight. 4 human beings who'd walked into this hospital with a mission and never walked out. It didn't matter that they'd been trying to kill her, trying to kill Mercer, trying to turn the ICU into a killing floor. Dead was dead. And she'd be seeing their faces for a long time. Daniels appeared, his suit somehow still immaculate despite the chaos. He stopped in front of her, his expression unreadable. "You blew up part of my crime scene. I saved your asset." Debatable, but there was no heat in his voice. 4 hostiles down, no civilian casualties. Mercer stable. I'd call that a win. Emily looked up at him. They knew exactly where he was. They had the power grid, the access codes, the layout. Someone on the inside gave them everything. "I know." Daniels crouched down to her eye level. "We're running deep background on every employee with security clearance. IT, maintenance, administration, nursing staff, everyone. But that's going to take time we might not have." "We don't have time. They'll try again. Not if we move him first." Emily's head snapped up. "You said he was too unstable." "He was. But after tonight, the risk of keeping him here outweighs the medical concerns. We're airlifting him to Walter Reed in 90 minutes. Full military escort, armed helicopter, no advance notice to anyone outside the immediate chain of command." Relief washed over her, followed immediately by bone-deep exhaustion. It was almost over. Almost. Daniel stood, pulling a business card from his jacket. Different from the last one. This one had a phone number and nothing else. "When this settles, call me. We've got positions open for someone with your skill set. Combat medicine, tactical operations, protective details. You'd be an asset." Emily took the card but didn't look at it. "I'm not going back to that life." "You never left it. You just changed the uniform." Daniels walked away, already on his phone, already managing the next crisis. Emily sat there in the ruins of the ICU, water still dripping from her hair, blood drying on her scrubs, and tried to process what had just happened. She'd saved Mercer, stopped the assault, kept people alive. But the cost was written all over the faces of the nurses huddled in the break room, the patients being evacuated on stretchers, the families crying in the hallway waiting for news. Kevin found her 40 minutes later. He looked like he'd aged a decade since she'd last seen him. "They're saying you killed 4 people." Emily didn't answer. "Is that true?" "Yes." Kevin ran a hand through his hair, his voice barely above a whisper. "Jesus, Emily, who are you?" "Someone who used to do this for a living. And now?" "Now I just want to go home." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. Because home meant safety, and safety was a luxury she'd never really had. Not in Syria, not in Iraq, and definitely not here. The airlift happened just before dawn. Emily watched from a distance as military medics wheeled Mercer out on a reinforced stretcher, IV lines secured, monitors beeping steadily. He was still unconscious, but his vitals were strong. He'd make it. 2 Blackhawks sat on the hospital's helipad, rotors already spinning. Armed personnel formed a tight perimeter. Nobody got within 50 yards without federal ID and biometric clearance. Daniels supervised the transfer personally, his hand never far from the sidearm holstered under his jacket. When Mercer was loaded and secured, he turned and caught Emily's eye across the tarmac. He nodded once. Then the helicopters lifted off, banking hard to the east, their running lights disappearing into the pre-dawn sky. It was over. Or it should have been. Emily walked back into the hospital through the emergency entrance. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. News vans were camped outside the main entrance, reporters doing live shots, cameramen jockeying for position. Police tape fluttered in the breeze. A crowd of onlookers had gathered across the street, phones out, recording everything. Inside, the ER had returned to something resembling normal. The fire alarm had been silenced. The lockdown lifted. Patients were being triaged again, though the staff moved with a shell-shocked slowness that spoke to the trauma of the night. Shanice was at the nurse's station, her eyes red-rimmed. When she saw Emily, she stood up fast. "You okay?" Shanice asked. "Yeah. Don't lie to me." Emily managed a weak smile. "I'm alive. That's something." Shanice pulled her into a hug. It was sudden and fierce, and Emily's first instinct was to pull away. But she didn't. She just stood there and let someone care, even if just for a moment. When they separated, Shanice was crying. "I thought you were going to die up there." "So did I." "But you didn't. You saved people. You kept that man alive when everyone else would have run." Emily didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Janet Kowalski appeared in the hallway, looking like she'd been awake for 3 days straight. Her usual severity had cracked, replaced by something raw and uncertain. "Carter?" she said quietly. "The board wants to see you." Emily's stomach dropped. "When?" "This morning, 9 a.m. "Am I being fired?" Janet hesitated, her eyes flicking away. "I don't know. They're calling it a debriefing, but the hospital's legal team will be there, and corporate counsel, and someone from the state medical board." That wasn't a debriefing. That was a tribunal. Emily felt the exhaustion settle into her bones. "Tell them I'll be there." Janet left without another word. Shanice watched her go, then turned back to Emily. "You know they're going to throw you under the bus, right? Blame you for all of this. For the shooting, the explosion, the media circus. They'll spin it so they look like victims and you look like a liability." "Probably. And you're just going to let them?" Emily sat down heavily in one of the plastic chairs. "What do you want me to do, Shanice? I can't change what happened. I can't bring back the sense of safety this place had. I can only show up and tell the truth." "The truth?" Shanice's voice rose. "The truth is you saved lives tonight. You kept this place from turning into a massacre. And they're going to punish you for it because you made them look incompetent, because you showed up there, precious Dr. Holloway, because you didn't stay in your lane." Emily closed her eyes. "I've been fighting my whole life. I'm tired." "Then don't go. Walk away. Let them have their meeting without you." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because I need to see it through." Emily opened her eyes. "I need to know if any of this mattered." Shanice sat down beside her, the fight draining out of her voice. "It mattered. You mattered. Don't let them make you forget that." They sat in silence for a long time, watching the sun climb higher through the emergency entrance windows. At 8:45 a.m., Emily changed into clean scrubs someone had left in her locker. She washed the blood off her hands, pulled her hair back, and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked exhausted, haunted, but she also looked like someone who'd survived. She walked to the administrative wing on the second floor. The conference room was at the end of a long hallway lined with motivational posters about teamwork and excellence. The irony wasn't lost on her. She pushed open the door. The room was full. The hospital board, 5 people in business suits, faces she'd seen in the hallways but never spoken to. The legal team, 3 lawyers with briefcases and tablets. Janet. The hospital's CEO, a man named Richard Voss, who'd never set foot in the ER. And sitting at the far end of the table, looking uncomfortable, was Dr. Marcus Holloway. Everyone turned when she entered. Voss gestured to an empty chair. "Ms. Carter, please sit." Emily remained standing. "I'm good here." Voss exchanged a glance with one of the lawyers. "Very well. We've asked you here to discuss the events of last night. As I'm sure you're aware, the hospital sustained significant damage. We've had federal agents swarming the building, media camping outside, and patients transferring to other facilities. This is a crisis of unprecedented scale." Emily said nothing. Voss continued, "We need to understand your role in what happened. We've received conflicting reports. Some say you acted heroically. Others suggest your actions escalated a situation that might have been resolved peacefully." "Peacefully." Emily's voice was flat. 4 armed men stormed the ICU with the intent to kill a federal asset. There was no peaceful resolution. One of the lawyers leaned forward. "But did you have authorization to engage those individuals? Did you have legal standing to use deadly force?" "I had the standing of someone trying to stop a murder." "That's not how the law works, Ms. Carter." "Then maybe the law needs to catch up to reality." The room went silent. Holloway spoke up, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. "This is exactly the problem. Ms. Carter has a history of insubordination, of overstepping her authority. Last night was simply the most extreme example. Emily turned to look at him. You want to talk about last night? Let's talk about last night. While I was upstairs stopping armed killers, where were you? Holloway's face reddened. I was following hospital protocol, coordinating with... You were hiding in your office while people died, while I kept your patients alive, while I did the job you were too scared to do. How dare you? Enough. Voss raised a hand. This isn't productive. Ms. Carter, the board has made a decision. Given the circumstances and the ongoing federal investigation, we believe it's in everyone's best interest if you take an extended leave of absence. Emily had expected this. Still hit like a punch to the gut. You're suspending me again. We're protecting the hospital. You're protecting yourselves. One of the board members, a woman with silver hair and cold eyes, spoke up. The optics of this situation are untenable. A nurse engaging in armed combat inside a hospital, using explosives, the liability alone... I used an oxygen tank, Emily interrupted, and I saved 12 patients who would be dead if I'd followed your protocol. That's speculation. It's fact. Emily's voice hardened. And if you want to fire me for saving lives, go ahead. But don't pretend this is about liability or optics. This is about control, about keeping people in their place, about punishing anyone who makes you look bad. Voss stood. Ms. Carter, you're being offered a paid leave of absence while we conduct a full review. That's generous given the circumstances. I suggest you take it. And if I don't, then we'll have no choice but to terminate your employment immediately. Emily looked around the room. At the lawyers with their blank professional faces, at the board members who'd never worked a shift in their lives, at Janet, who couldn't meet her eyes, at Holloway, who was trying to hide a smile. She thought about the patients she'd saved, the lives that would have been lost, the people who'd thanked her, hugged her, told her she was a hero, and she thought about the system that was punishing her for it. Fine, she said. I'll take the leave. Voss looked relieved. Excellent. We'll be in touch regarding next steps. Emily turned and walked to the door, but before she left, she stopped and looked back at Holloway. You almost killed a man because you were too arrogant to listen, she said quietly. Last night, 4 men tried to kill 12 people and I stopped them. We're not the same, and you know it. She walked out before he could respond. The hallway was empty. Her footsteps echoed on the tile. She made it halfway to the elevator before her hand started shaking again. She pushed through the stairwell door and sat down on the steps, her back against the cold concrete wall, and finally let herself feel it. The fear. The anger. The bone-deep exhaustion of fighting a battle she couldn't win. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She opened it. You should have stayed out of it. Her blood went cold. Another text appeared. They're coming for you next. Emily's hands went still. She looked up, scanning the stairwell. Empty. But her instincts were screaming. She stood and moved quietly down the stairs, her hand hovering near her pocket where she'd stashed one of the syringes from last night. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. She reached the ground floor and pushed through the exit into the parking lot. The morning sun was bright, almost blinding. Her truck was parked 3 rows back, right where she'd left it. And next to it, a black sedan with tinted windows. Engine running. Emily's heart rate kicked up. She reached under her scrub top and pulled out the Glock she'd taken from Torres. She'd meant to return it but hadn't had the chance. Still loaded, still ready. She approached the truck slowly, watching the sedan in her peripheral vision. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Mid-40s, athletic build, wearing jeans and a jacket. His hands were visible. No weapon. But his eyes told a different story. Emily's finger moved to the trigger guard. Can I help you? The man smiled. Emily Carter, we need to talk. I don't know you. But I know you. Combat medic, Syria, Iraq, Mosul, Raqqa. You saved a lot of lives over there. Made a lot of enemies, too. Emily's mouth went dry. Who are you? Someone who knows what you're worth. And someone who knows there are people who'd pay a lot of money to see you dead. Is that a threat? It's a warning. The man took a step closer. Emily raised the Glock. He stopped, hands up in a placating gesture. Easy. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to offer you a choice. What choice? Walk away. Disappear again. Change your name, move across the country, start over, or stay here and become a target, because the people who wanted Mercer dead, they know you're the one who stopped them, and they're not forgiving. Emily's hands were steady now, the weapon an extension of her will. And if I don't run? The man shrugged. Then you better be ready for a war you can't win. He got back in the sedan, closed the door, and drove away slowly. Emily stood there in the parking lot, the Glock still in her hand, watching the car disappear around the corner. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo, taken from across the street, through a telephoto lens. A photo of her, standing in the ICU last night, covered in blood, weapon in hand, and below it a caption, "We're watching." Emily's grip tightened on the phone. She thought it was over, but it was just beginning. Emily deleted the photo without looking at it again. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled, but inside she was calculating distances, angles, vulnerabilities. The parking lot was too exposed, too many sightlines. Whoever had sent that message could be watching right now through a scope mounted on any of the surrounding buildings. She got in her truck, locked the doors, and drove. Not home. Home was compromised the moment they'd identified her. Instead, she headed west toward the industrial district where storage units and abandoned warehouses lined streets that nobody walked after dark. She needed time to think, time to plan, time to figure out who the hell was hunting her and why they thought she'd run. Her phone rang. Daniels. She answered but didn't speak. "You got the message," he said. It wasn't a question. "How long have you known?" "About the surveillance?" 40 minutes. We picked up chatter on a dark web forum. Contract posted, your photo attached, no price listed. That usually means the budget's unlimited. Emily's jaw tightened. "So I'm a target now." "You were always a target. You just didn't know it." Daniel's voice was clipped, professional. Mercer wasn't random. The intel he was carrying, it exposed a network. Foreign operatives embedded in domestic infrastructure, defense contractors, government agencies, and they know you're the reason he survived. "Then get me protection." "I can't. Officially, you're a civilian. No federal employment, no active clearance. My hands are tied." "Bullshit. You had no problem using me when you needed someone to keep Mercer alive." "And you did. But now the situation's changed. If I bring you in, I'm admitting we used an uncleared civilian in a federal operation. That opens legal doors I can't close." Emily pulled into an empty lot behind a shuttered auto shop. She killed the engine. "So you're just going to leave me out here?" "I'm giving you options. 1. Disappear. New identity, new city, federal relocation assistance under the table. 2. Go loud. Contact media, tell your story, make yourself too visible to touch quietly. 3. Come work for us. Sign the papers, get cleared, and we bring you inside where we can protect you." All 3 options put me in your pocket. Better my pocket than a grave. Emily ended the call. She sat there in the silence, watching pigeons peck at trash near a dumpster. The morning sun climbed higher, burning off the haze. Somewhere across the city, Riverside General was dealing with the aftermath of last night. And somewhere in the shadows, people were deciding whether she lived or died. Her phone buzzed again. Not a call this time. An email. From an address she didn't recognize, routed through multiple proxies based on the headers. Subject line. "You want the truth?" She opened it. Inside was a single attachment, a PDF. 63 pages of personnel records, financial transactions, encrypted communications. And at the top, a name that made her blood run cold. Dr. Marcus Holloway. Emily scrolled through the document. Wire transfers to offshore accounts. Encrypted messages coordinating with someone identified only as the broker. Meeting logs that corresponded with known intelligence breaches. And buried in the metadata, communications sent from inside Riverside General in the hours before Mercer's transport arrived. Holloway hadn't just been incompetent. He'd been feeding information to the people trying to kill Mercer. The email had no message, just the attachment and a final line. Clock's ticking. Use it or lose it. Emily saved the file to 3 different cloud accounts, then forwarded it to Daniels with a single word. Proof. Her phone rang immediately. "Where did you get this?" Daniels demanded. "Does it matter?" "If it's fabricated, it's not. Check the metadata. Cross-reference the transactions. Holloway's dirty, and you know it." Silence on the line, then, "Stay where you are. I'm sending a team." "No teams. I'm done being handled." "Carter?" She hung up and pulled the battery from her phone. Then she drove back to Riverside General. The media circus had grown. 3 times as many news vans now, satellite trucks blocking the street, reporters doing stand-ups with the hospital in the background. Emily parked 2 blocks away and entered through the service entrance near the laundry facilities. No cameras there, no security either, because budget cuts had eliminated third-shift monitoring 6 months ago. She moved through the basement corridors, past the cafeteria kitchen and maintenance offices, and took the service elevator to the 2nd floor. The administrative wing was quiet. Most of the staff were either in emergency meetings or had called in sick, unable to face another day in a building that had become a war zone. Emily found what she was looking for in the records department. An older woman named Clara, who'd worked at Riverside for 30 years and knew where every piece of paper in the building was filed. Clara looked up when Emily entered, her eyes widening. "You shouldn't be here." "I need Holloway's personnel file. I can't just—" Emily pulled up the PDF on her backup phone. "He's been selling information to foreign operatives. People died because of him. More will die if someone doesn't stop him." Clara stared at the screen, her face going pale. Then she stood, unlocked a filing cabinet, and pulled out a thick folder. "This doesn't leave this room." "It won't." Emily photographed every page. Disciplinary actions that had been buried, patient complaints that never went anywhere, a pattern of behavior spanning 15 years, all covered up by a hospital administration more concerned with reputation than accountability. She was halfway through the file when she heard voices in the hallway. Clara's eyes went wide. "That's Holloway." Emily shoved the file back in the cabinet and moved to the door. Through the narrow window, she could see Holloway walking with 2 men in suits. Not hospital administration, federal agents based on the way they carried themselves. They were interviewing him, and he was performing, gesturing earnestly, playing the concerned physician who'd tried his best under impossible circumstances. Emily's hands clenched. She wanted to burst through that door, throw the evidence in his face, watch him crumble. But that wasn't how this worked. Holloway had lawyers, connections, years of political capital built up. She had a deleted email and a reputation as a troublemaker. She needed more than evidence. She needed a confession. Clara touched her arm. "There's another way out." Through the storage room. Emily followed her through a maze of filing boxes and outdated equipment to a back door that opened into a maintenance corridor. She thanked Clara and disappeared into the building's infrastructure. By noon, the news had broken. Not about Holloway, that would take time, but about Emily. Someone had leaked her military record to the press. Heavily redacted, but enough to paint a picture. Combat medic, special operations, classified deployments. The story wrote itself. Decorated veteran forced to work as a hospital nurse, suspended for speaking up, then thrust into a firefight that left 4 dead. The media loved it. Cable news ran with it. Social media exploded. Within 2 hours, Emily Carter was trending nationally. Her phone, battery reinstalled, wouldn't stop buzzing. Interview requests. Book deals. A podcast wanted her for a 12-part series. TMZ offered $50,000 for an exclusive. She ignored all of it. Instead, she went to the one place she knew Holloway would be that evening. The Riverside Medical Association's monthly dinner. A networking event where doctors drank expensive wine and pretended patient care was more than a billing code. Holloway never missed it. Too many opportunities to glad hand and polish his reputation. Emily arrived at the hotel venue at 6:30, dressed in the only professional outfit she owned, slacks and a blazer she'd bought for her mother's funeral 3 years ago. She talked her way past the registration desk by claiming to be Dr. Patricia Nguyen's guest, knowing Nguyen had registered but wouldn't attend. The woman had been traumatized by the ICU assault and had taken emergency leave. The ballroom was half full, clusters of physicians and administrators mingling near high-top tables. Emily grabbed a water with lime and positioned herself near the bar where she could watch the room. Holloway arrived at 7, flanked by 2 colleagues from Riverside's surgical department. He looked tired but composed, his smile fixed in place as he worked the room. He was good at this. Decades of practice hiding who he really was behind a mask of professional competence. Emily waited. At 7:45, Holloway excused himself and headed toward the restrooms. Emily followed at a distance, her heart rate steady, her plan crystallizing. The hallway outside the ballroom was empty, carpeted in burgundy with gold sconces casting warm light. Holloway pushed through the men's room door. Emily counted to 10, then followed. He was washing his hands when she entered. Their eyes met in the mirror. Holloway spun around. "What the hell are you doing in here?" Emily locked the door behind her. "We need to talk." "I have nothing to say to you." "Then listen." She pulled out her phone and held up the screen showing the financial records. Wire transfers, encrypted communications, meeting logs. You've been feeding information to a foreign intelligence network for at least 18 months, maybe longer. Holloway's face went white. That's fabricated. The metadata says otherwise. So do the timestamps. You sent 3 messages the night before Mercer arrived. GPS coordinates, security protocols, medical status updates. You told them exactly where he'd be and when. You can't prove any of that. I don't have to. Federal investigators are already building a case. They found the same records I did. Maybe even more. Emily stepped closer. But here's what I'm wondering. Why? You're a doctor. You took an oath. What made you betray everything you're supposed to stand for? Holloway's jaw worked. For a moment, she thought he'd try to bluster his way out, maintain the fiction, but something in his eyes cracked. "Money," he said quietly. "It started with money. They approached me 3 years ago, said they needed information, medical protocols, security procedures, nothing classified. I didn't think it would hurt anyone, but it did. I didn't know they'd try to kill someone." His voice rose. "I thought it was industrial espionage, corporate intelligence gathering. By the time I realized what I was involved in, they had enough on me to destroy my career, my life. So you kept feeding them information. What choice did I have?" Emily felt disgust rise in her throat. "You could have come forward, told the truth, faced the consequences like an adult. Easy for you to say. You don't have 20 years invested in a career. You're just a nurse." There it was. Even now, backed into a corner, he couldn't help himself. "I'm the nurse who saved the man you tried to kill," Emily said. "I'm the reason your entire operation collapsed, and I'm the one who's going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you did." Holloway's hands trembled. "If you release that information, you'll have a target on your back for the rest of your life. These people don't forgive. They don't forget. I already have a target on my back. At least this way I'm taking you down with me." She unlocked the door and walked out. Holloway didn't follow. He just stood there in the bathroom, his reflection staring back at him in the mirror, watching his entire world collapse. Emily made it halfway across the ballroom before the doors burst open and federal agents poured in. 6 of them, moving fast, badges out. They headed straight for the hallway she'd just left. The room went silent. Doctors froze mid-conversation, drinks halfway to lips. Through the crowd, Emily saw Daniels. He nodded once. She'd bought him the time he needed. While she'd been confronting Holloway, Daniels had been securing warrants, freezing accounts, locking down the evidence. 2 agents emerged from the hallway with Holloway between them, his hands cuffed behind his back. His face was ashen. People stared. Someone started recording on their phone. Holloway's eyes found Emily across the room. There was no anger there anymore, just defeat. The agents walked him out. The doors closed. And slowly, conversation resumed, everyone desperate to pretend they hadn't just witnessed the end of a career. Emily left through a side exit. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. She walked to her truck, got in, and sat there for a long time, waiting for the adrenaline to fade. Her phone buzzed. Daniels. That was reckless. It worked. This time. Next time you might not be so lucky. Will there be a next time? Daniels was quiet for a moment. Holloway's talking, giving up names, locations, communication protocols. The network he was feeding is bigger than we thought. International, well-funded, and now they know you're the pressure point that brought it down. So I'm still a target, more than before. But here's the thing, you're also a liability for them now. Too visible, too connected. Taking you out would draw attention they can't afford. He paused. You played this smart, Carter. You made yourself untouchable by making yourself unavoidable. Emily wasn't sure that was true, but she was too tired to argue. She drove home as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Her apartment was a studio on the 3rd floor of a converted factory building. Cheap rent, thin walls, neighbors who minded their own business. She'd lived there for 2 years and never invited anyone inside. She unlocked the door and froze. Someone had been here. Nothing obvious, no broken locks, no overturned furniture. But small things were wrong. A chair pulled out slightly, a cabinet door not quite closed. Her mail stack shifted 3 inches to the left. Emily's hand went to the Glock tucked in her waistband. She cleared each room methodically, checking closets, behind doors, under the bed. Empty. But on her kitchen counter, she found it. A single photograph, printed on glossy paper, placed face up where she couldn't miss it. The photo showed her mother's grave, taken recently based on the fresh flowers someone had left, and written across the bottom in red ink, "You can't protect everyone." Emily's blood turned to ice. Her mother had died 3 years ago, cancer. Emily had been overseas when it happened, unable to get leave in time. She'd come home to an empty house and a cemetery plot, and she'd never forgiven herself. The message was clear. They couldn't touch her directly, so they'd go after the people she cared about. Except her mother was already gone. Her father had died when she was 12. She had no siblings, no close family. The people she cared about were her colleagues at Riverside, and after tonight, most of them wouldn't speak to her anyway. Whoever left this photo didn't know her as well as they thought, but they knew enough to find her apartment, to get inside undetected, to leave a message that was both a threat and a promise. Emily picked up the photo and studied it. The angle suggested it had been taken from across the cemetery road, telephoto lens, probably in the last 48 hours. Whoever took it had been watching, waiting, planning. She turned the photo over. On the back, written in the same red ink, 48 hours. Disappear or we finish this. Emily set the photo down and pulled out her phone. She dialed a number she'd memorized but never called. A woman answered on the second ring. "Yes?" "It's Carter. I need a favor." "You're not supposed to have this number." "But I do, and I need a favor." A sigh. "What kind?" "The kind that doesn't go in a report." Silence. Then, "Where are you?" Emily gave the address. 20 minutes. The line went dead. Emily packed a bag. Not much. Clothes, toiletries, the Glock, 2 spare magazines, the flash drive with Holloway's records. Everything she needed to disappear or fight. She wasn't sure which yet. 19 minutes later, a knock at the door. 3 taps, pause, 2 more. Emily opened it. The woman standing there was late 30s, athletic build, short dark hair. She wore jeans and a leather jacket and carried herself like someone who'd spent time in places where mistakes were fatal. Her name was Reeves. They'd worked together in Syria, back when Emily was attached to a forward surgical team and Reeves was running intelligence operations. Reeves stepped inside and locked the door behind her. "You look like hell." "Feel worse." Reeves scanned the apartment, taking in the sparse furniture, the packed bag, the photo on the counter. She picked it up, read the message, set it down. "Subtle? They're giving me 48 hours to run." "You gonna take it?" "What do you think?" Reeves smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "I think you didn't call me to help you pack. I need to know who's behind this. Not the contractors they sent. Not the middlemen. The person writing the checks. That information's classified 6 ways from Sunday. Then unclassify it. I could lose my job." "You could. Or you could help me finish what we started in Raqqa." Reeves' expression shifted. In Raqqa, they'd been part of an operation to extract a high-value target from an insurgent stronghold. The mission had gone sideways. 3 operators dead. Emily had kept the survivors alive long enough for exfil, working in a bombed-out building under fire for 8 hours straight. Reeves had been one of those survivors. "Low blow," Reeves said, "but effective." Reeves pulled out a tablet, tapped through several encrypted screens, and turned it toward Emily. "This doesn't exist. You didn't see it from me." The screen showed a dossier. Name: Viktor Kuznetsov. Russian national, former FSB, current status unknown. Known associate of multiple intelligence networks, specializing in recruitment and blackmail operations targeting Western medical and defense infrastructure. And at the bottom of the file, a recent communication intercept. Carter asset has become problematic. Recommend immediate termination. Emily's hands clenched. "Where is he?" Last confirmed location was Montreal, but he moves constantly. Shell companies, false identities, diplomatic cover. He's a ghost. Ghosts can be caught. Not by you. You're a civilian with a target on your back. Reeves took the tablet back. The smart play is to disappear. New name, new life. Let the professionals handle Kuznetsov. The professionals had Holloway on the inside for 18 months and didn't catch him until I handed them the evidence. Fair point. Reeves sat down on the edge of Emily's couch. So what's your play? Force him out, make him come to me. How? Emily pulled up her email and started typing. I'm going to do exactly what he doesn't want. I'm going to tell everyone what happened, every detail, every name, every connection. I'm going to make this so loud and so public that Kuznetsov has no choice but to either run or try to silence me. That's suicide. That's leverage. Emily hit send. The email went to 15 major news outlets simultaneously with the full story attached. Holloway's records, Mercer's transport, the assault on Riverside General, her military background, all of it. Reeves stared at her. You just painted a target on yourself the size of Texas. I already had one. Now I'm controlling the narrative. Within 30 minutes, Emily's inbox was flooded. Journalists calling, producers pitching, morning shows offering exclusive interviews. One network wanted her live at 6 a.m. Eastern. She accepted all of them. Reeves shook her head. You're insane. Probably, but I'm not running. Then you're going to need protection. I've got you? I meant official protection. Federal marshals, safe house, the works. The moment I accept that, I lose mobility. I become reactive instead of proactive. Emily started checking the Glock, field stripping it on her kitchen table. I need to stay ahead of them. Reeves watched her work. You've changed since Syria. You're harder. Syria made me harder. Coming home broke something else. Emily reassembled the weapon and racked the slide. I spent 3 years trying to be normal, trying to fit in, trying to pretend I was just a nurse. And you know what? It didn't work. Because normal doesn't exist for people like us. So what now? Now I finish this. On my terms. Reeves stood. I'll see what I can do from my end. Run interference, buy you time. But Carter, 48 hours means they're already in motion. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. She left. Emily sat alone in her apartment, surrounded by the evidence of her disrupted life. The photo of her mother's grave, the packed bag, the loaded weapon. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos. People going about their lives, unaware that somewhere in the shadows, decisions were being made about who lived and who died. Emily's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without speaking. A voice, accented and calm. Ms. Carter, you've made things very complicated. Kuznetsov. A low chuckle. You know who I am. Good. That saves time. What do you want? The same thing you want. Resolution. You've become a problem I can no longer ignore. Then come find me. I don't need to find you. I already know where you are. 3rd floor, apartment 3C, lights on in the kitchen. You're sitting at the table with a weapon in front of you, thinking you're safe because you went public. Emily's blood ran cold. She moved to the window, careful not to silhouette herself. Across the street, in the upper floor of a parking garage, she caught the glint of glass. Scope. Publicity won't save you, Kuznetsov continued. It just changes the timetable. You have 24 hours to leave the country. After that, I stop being polite. I'm not going anywhere. Then you'll die in that apartment, or on the street, or in your sleep. The location doesn't matter to me. Here's what matters to me, Emily said, her voice steady. You're used to working in shadows. Blackmail, intimidation, hired killers. But I just sent your entire operation to every major news outlet in the country. By tomorrow morning, your name, your face, your network, all of it will be public. You'll be the most wanted man in 3 intelligence agencies. So you can come after me, but you'll do it in the spotlight. And I don't think you want that. Silence on the line. Then, you're bluffing. Check your email. I sent you a copy. She heard typing, then a sharp intake of breath. You've made a serious mistake, Kuznetsov said. No, you made the mistake when you went after people I cared about. When you tried to kill Mercer. When you turned Holloway into your puppet. You thought you were untouchable. But nobody is. The line went dead. Emily moved away from the window and killed the lights. In the darkness, she grabbed her bag and weapon and headed for the door. The apartment wasn't safe anymore. Maybe nowhere was. But sitting still meant dying. She took the back stairs down to the parking garage, moving fast and quiet. Her truck was parked on the second level. She was 10 feet from it when she heard the footsteps behind her. She spun, weapon raised. A figure emerged from the shadows. Not Kuznetsov. Someone younger, leaner, with the look of someone hired for one specific job. "Drop the gun," he said. He had an accent, Eastern European, and his own weapon was already trained on her center mass. Emily didn't move. "You really want to do this here? Cameras everywhere, security patrol every 15 minutes. You fire that weapon and you'll be locked down before you reach the exit." "I'll take my chances." "Then you're stupid." She dove left as he fired. The shot went wide, sparking off concrete. Emily rolled, came up firing, 2 rounds center mass. The man went down hard. She didn't wait to see if he stayed down. She ran for her truck, threw her bag in, and peeled out of the garage with tires screaming. Behind her, she heard shouting. More footsteps. They'd sent a team, not just one shooter. Emily blew through the garage exit and onto the street, cutting off a taxi and running a red light. Horns blared. Someone shouted. She didn't care. She drove for 20 minutes, taking random turns, doubling back, making sure she wasn't followed. When she was certain she was clear, she pulled into an all-night diner and parked in back where the truck wasn't visible from the street. Inside, the diner smelled like coffee and grease. A waitress with tired eyes brought her a cup without asking. Emily sat in a corner booth where she could watch both doors and tried to slow her racing heart. Her phone buzzed. Daniels. "Where are you?" "Somewhere safe." "That shooter in your garage?" "Dead?" "No, critical condition. Security footage shows you fired in self-defense, but we need to bring you in before this gets worse." "It's already worse. Kuznetsov called me directly. He knows where I live, where I work. He's got resources I can't fight alone." "Then let us help." Emily looked out the diner window at the empty street. "I sent the story to the media. It goes live in 6 hours. After that, there's no putting this back in the box." "I know. I've already got calls from DOJ, State Department, and 3 congressional offices." "You just lit the biggest fire of your life, Carter." "Good. Let it burn." She hung up and ordered eggs she wouldn't eat. At 5:47 a.m., the story broke. Every major network ran it. Cable news went wall to wall. Social media exploded. Within an hour, Emily Carter was the most talked about person in the country. Decorated combat medic, whistleblower. The nurse who'd saved a federal asset and exposed a foreign intelligence network operating on American soil. The hospital tried to distance itself, issued a statement about ongoing investigations and commitment to patient safety. It satisfied no one. Holloway's arraignment was pushed up to that afternoon. The courthouse was mobbed, and somewhere Viktor Kuznetsov was watching his entire operation collapse in real time. Emily sat in a motel room she'd paid for in cash, watching the news coverage on a laptop with the sound muted. She looked exhausted on camera, haunted, but also determined. The media loved the story because it had everything: conspiracy, betrayal, action, a lone hero against impossible odds. They didn't know the half of it. Her phone rang, private number. She answered. "You won," Kuznetsov said. His voice was different now, flat, no trace of the earlier confidence. "Congratulations." "It's not about winning." "No? Then what is it about?" "Accountability. You hurt people, used them, discarded them. Someone had to stop you. And you think you have?" "I'm already gone, Ms. Carter. New name, new identity, new operation. This setback is temporary. But your victory? That's permanent. And so is the target on your back." "Then I'll wear it." "We'll see how long your courage lasts." The line went dead for the last time. Emily set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. She'd done what she set out to do: exposed the network, brought down Holloway, forced Kuznetsov to run. But the cost was written in every sleepless night ahead, every shadow she'd check, every door she'd lock twice. Her laptop chimed. New email. From internal.affairs@riversidegeneral.org. Subject: Personnel Review. Final determination. She opened it. Dear Ms. Carter, following a comprehensive review of recent events, the Board of Directors has determined that your suspension is lifted effective immediately. Furthermore, we wish to offer you the position of Clinical Operations Supervisor, Emergency Services, with a commensurate increase in compensation and authority. We recognize that your actions, while unorthodox, ultimately protected our patients and exposed serious threats to hospital security. We would be honored if you would continue your service to Riverside General in this new capacity. Emily read it twice. Then she typed a response. I decline. Find someone else. She hit send and closed the laptop. Outside, the sun was rising. A new day. A new chance. Her phone buzzed one final time. Not a call. A text from Reeves. Package delivered. Check the storage unit. Emily drove across town to a facility on the industrial edge where she'd rented a unit 6 months ago under a false name. She punched in the code and lifted the rolling door. Inside, stacked neatly on a metal shelf, were 3 cardboard boxes. The first contained medical supplies, combat-grade trauma equipment, everything she'd need to save a life under fire. The second contained weapons. Nothing fancy, reliable, functional, untraceable. The third contained documents. New identity, clean passport, bank account with enough money to start over anywhere in the world, and a handwritten note from Reeves. Your choice, run or fight. Either way, you're not doing it alone. Emily stood in the storage unit, surrounded by the tools of 2 very different lives, and realized something fundamental had changed. She wasn't running, she wasn't hiding, she was done being the person everyone underestimated. She locked the storage unit and walked back to her truck. As she opened the door, she saw them, 3 black SUVs pulling into the parking lot, moving fast. Federal agents poured out. Daniels was in the lead. He walked over, hands visible, no weapon drawn. We need to talk. About what? About a job offer. Real one this time. Full federal appointment, medical operations coordinator for Joint Task Force operations. Salary, benefits, protection, everything. Emily leaned against her truck. Why? Because you're wasted in a hospital. Because you've proven you can operate under pressure. And because we need people who won't back down when it matters. Daniels handed her a folder. Read it. Think about it. But don't take too long. The offer expires in 72 hours. He walked back to his SUV. The convoy pulled out, leaving Emily standing alone in the parking lot. She opened the folder. Inside was everything he'd promised. Plus one addition at the bottom of the contract, handwritten in Daniel's blocky script. P.S. Kuznetsov made a mistake. He threatened you. Now he's our priority target, and you're the only person who's ever backed him into a corner. Help us finish this. Emily closed the folder. Across town, in a hospital she'd never work in again, nurses were starting their shifts. Doctors were making rounds. Patients were fighting for every breath. And somewhere in the world, Viktor Kuznetsov was planning his next move. Emily got in her truck, pulled out her phone, and made a call. Daniels answered immediately. When do I start? Monday morning, Daniels said. 700 sharp, Federal Building downtown, 5th floor. Bring your medical credentials and be ready to sign a stack of NDAs that'll make your head spin. Emily ended the call and sat in her truck, engine idling, watching the city wake up around her. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she registered that this was the moment everything changed. Not the firefight in the ICU, not confronting Holloway. This, the decision to stop running from who she really was. She drove to Riverside General one last time. The parking lot was half empty. Staff turnover had accelerated after the attack, nurses and doctors quietly transferring to other facilities, where the worst thing that happened was a difficult patient, not a military-grade assault. Emily parked in her usual spot out of habit, then walked through the main entrance instead of the staff door. The lobby had been cleaned up. New glass in the windows, fresh paint covering the bullet holes. But you could still feel it. The way people moved a little faster through certain corridors. How security guards watched everyone a little too closely. The flinch when an elevator dinged unexpectedly. Violence left marks that no amount of renovation could erase. Shanice was at the ER nurse's station, charting on a tablet. She looked up when Emily approached, and her whole face transformed. You're alive, Shanice said, coming around the desk to pull Emily into a hug that probably violated 6 different professional boundaries. I saw the news. All of it. Girl, you've been through hell. I'm okay. Shanice pulled back, studying her face. No, you're not. But you're still standing, which is something. She glanced around to make sure they weren't being overheard. Is it true? About Holloway? Every word. I always knew he was trash, but damn. Shanice shook her head. They arrested him yesterday. Took him out of his house in handcuffs with news cameras everywhere. His wife was crying, neighbors watching. It was brutal. Emily felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sympathy. Just emptiness where anger used to be. Where's Kevin? Called in. 3rd day in a row. I think he's done. Can't blame him. Shanice lowered her voice. Half the staff's looking for new jobs. Nobody wants to work somewhere that got turned into a war zone. What about you? I've got 3 kids and a mortgage. I can't afford principals. But there was resignation in her voice, the sound of someone who'd stopped believing things could get better. Why are you here? Saying goodbye. Understanding crossed Shanice's face. You're leaving. New job. Federal. Starts Monday. Good. You deserve better than this place. Shanice squeezed her hand. But I'm going to miss you. You made me believe we could actually make a difference, you know, even when everything was falling apart. Emily didn't trust herself to speak. She just nodded. She found Dr. Patricia Nguyen in the staff lounge, sitting alone with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. Nguyen looked up when Emily entered, and something complicated passed across her face. Relief, guilt, exhaustion. I heard you took the federal job, Nguyen said. News travels fast. It's a small world when you blow up a hospital's reputation on national television. Nguyen's tone was dry, but not unkind. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. Holloway needed to be stopped. I should have done it years ago. Why didn't you? Nguyen was quiet for a long moment. Because I was tired. Because fighting the system is exhausting. Because every time I tried to push back, they'd bury me in committee meetings and policy reviews and disciplinary actions until I just gave up. She looked directly at Emily. You didn't give up. That's the difference between us. I almost did, more than once. But you didn't. And now Holloway's facing federal charges, the board's being investigated, and the entire hospital's under scrutiny. That's not nothing, Emily. That's everything. Emily sat down across from her. Did you know about what he was doing? No, I knew he was incompetent, arrogant, dangerous to patients. But I didn't know he was actively working for foreign operatives. If I had, Nguyen trailed off. I want to say I would have done something, but honestly, I don't know. It was the most honest thing anyone at Riverside had ever said to her. What happens now? Emily asked. To the hospital? Federal oversight, probably. New administration, policy overhaul. Maybe it gets better. Maybe it just gets different. Nguyen managed a weak smile. Either way, it won't have you anymore. And that's our loss. Emily stood. Take care of yourself, Dr. Nguyen. Patricia, we've been through too much for titles. She stood as well, offering her hand. Good luck out there. And Emily? Thank you for having the courage I didn't. They shook hands, and Emily left the lounge feeling like she'd closed a chapter she hadn't known she was still writing. Her final stop was Janet Kowalski's office. The door was open, and Janet was packing boxes, personal photos, administrative manuals, a coffee mug that read, World's Okayest Supervisor. She looked up when Emily knocked. Come to gloat? Janet asked without venom. No. Then what? Emily leaned against the doorframe. I came to understand. You've been here 30 years. You've seen administrations come and go, policies change, budgets cut. You did what you thought you had to do to survive. Janet set down the frame she was holding. Is there a but coming? But survival isn't the same as living, and protecting yourself isn't the same as doing right. Easy to say when you're young and bulletproof. I'm not bulletproof. I've just got nothing left to lose. Emily straightened. You suspended me for trying to save a patient's life. You sided with Holloway because it was politically safe. You chose the institution over the people it was supposed to serve. That's not survival. That's cowardice. Janet's face flushed. You don't know what it's like to carry the weight of this place on your shoulders for 3 decades. To make impossible choices between bad options. To watch everything you build get torn down by budget cuts and corporate interference. You're right. I don't know what that's like. But I know what it's like to watch people die because someone was too afraid to do the right thing. And I'd rather burn out fighting than fade away making excuses. She left before Janet could respond. Outside the hospital, Emily stood in the parking lot and took one last look at the building that had been her refuge and her prison for 2 years. The place where she'd tried to be invisible, where she'd failed spectacularly. Her phone buzzed. Daniels. Change of plans. We need you tonight. Kuznetsov's been located. Emily's pulse kicked up. Where? Montreal. Safe house in the financial district. Local assets have him under surveillance, but we need to move fast before he ghosts again. Daniels paused. This is voluntary. You're not operational until Monday. But if you want in, I'm in. Wheels up in 3 hours. Private airfield, north of the city. I'm sending you coordinates. Emily was already moving toward her truck. I'll be there. She made one stop on the way. The storage unit. She grabbed the second box, the one with the tactical gear and weapons, and loaded it into the truck bed under a tarp. Then she drove to the airfield Daniels had specified, a small private strip surrounded by warehouses and chain-link fence. 2 vehicles were already there, a black SUV and an unmarked van. Daniels stood beside the SUV talking to a woman in tactical gear. When he saw Emily approach, he waved her over. Carter, this is Agent Shaw, tactical team leader. Shaw, this is our medical asset. Shaw looked Emily up and down with professional assessment. You the one who held off 4 hostiles at Riverside? Yeah. Good. You'll fit right in. Shaw turned back to Daniels. We're waiting on one more, then we're airborne. The last vehicle arrived 10 minutes later, a sedan with government plates. Reeves got out carrying a duffel bag and wearing a slight smile. Couldn't let you have all the fun, Reeves said. Emily felt something loosen in her chest. You're cleared for this? I made some calls, pulled some strings. Turns out stopping an international intelligence network buys you a lot of goodwill. Reeves slung the duffel over her shoulder. Plus, Kuznetsov tried to kill you. That makes it personal. They boarded a small jet, corporate looking on the outside, all business on the inside with communications equipment and tactical displays. The team was small. Daniels, Shaw, 3 tactical operators, Reeves, and Emily. Tight, professional, focused. Shaw briefed them during the flight. Kuznetsov was holed up in a luxury apartment building, 4th floor, minimal security. He thought he was safe. Thought the heat would die down. He was wrong. Our objective is capture, not kill, Shaw said. We need him alive to roll up the rest of his network. But if he presents a threat, you're authorized to use whatever force necessary. She looked at Emily. Your job is to stay with the vehicle and provide medical support if anyone goes down. You're not tactical. You're not armed. You're medical only. Clear? Clear, Emily lied. They landed in Montreal just after sunset. 2 local vehicles were waiting, SUVs with Canadian federal markings. The drive to the financial district took 20 minutes through downtown traffic. The apartment building was modern glass and steel, the kind of place where privacy was purchased and questions weren't asked. Shaw's team had already done reconnaissance. 2 exits, limited security cameras, a service elevator that bypassed the main lobby. The team geared up in an underground parking garage 3 blocks away. Body armor, suppressed weapons, communications equipment. Emily stayed with the vehicle as instructed, but she'd brought the Glock from the storage unit and it was tucked under her jacket, just in case. Shaw's voice crackled over the radio. Moving to position. Medical, confirm status. Emily keyed her radio. Standing by. She watched on the tactical feed as the team entered the building through the service entrance. 4 operators moving in formation, weapons up, clearing corners. Reeves was with them, her movements fluid and confident. They reached the 4th floor without contact, approached Kuznetsov's door. Daniels overrode the electronic lock with a device that looked like a credit card reader. The door swung open, empty. Shaw's voice was tight. Clear, target's not here. Daniels moved through the apartment, checking rooms. But he was. Coffee's still warm. Bed's been slept in. He left in the last 30 minutes. He knew we were coming, Reeves said. Emily's stomach dropped. Pull out. It's a trap. But even as she said it, she heard the explosion. Not from the apartment. From the parking garage below. The tactical feed went to static. The building's fire alarm started screaming. and through her windshield, Emily saw smoke billowing from the garage entrance. She grabbed her medical kit and ran. The garage was chaos. Sprinklers had triggered, water pouring down, car alarms wailing. The explosion had taken out a support column, and part of the ceiling had collapsed, blocking the main exit. Emily found the first casualty 20 feet from the blast site. One of the tactical operators, unconscious, bleeding from a head wound. She dropped to her knees beside him, checking vitals. Pulse weak but present, breathing shallow. She worked fast. Pressure dressing for the head wound. IV line for fluids. Collar to stabilize his neck. Around her she could hear shouting, people running, more sirens approaching. Reeves appeared through the smoke, limping. "Carter! I'm here! You hit?" "Shrapnel. Left leg. I can walk." Reeves dropped beside her, helping stabilize the wounded operator. "Where's the rest of the team?" "Don't know. Radio's dead." They got the operator onto a backboard and started moving him toward the exit when Emily heard it, a single gunshot from deeper in the garage. She stopped. That was suppressed fire. Could be our team. Or it could be Kuznetsov cleaning up witnesses. Emily handed Reeves the backboard handles. "Get him out. I'm going back." "Like hell you are." But Emily was already moving, the Glock in her hand, following the sound deeper into the garage. She found Shaw and another operator pinned down behind a concrete pillar. 20 feet away, 2 men in tactical gear were advancing, weapons up. Not Canadian Federal. Not anyone Emily recognized. Kuznetsov's cleanup crew. Emily took cover behind a car and called out, "Federal agent, drop your weapons!" The 2 men spun toward her voice. Emily fired twice. One went down. The second returned fire, bullets punching through the car's windows. She rolled left, came up behind a different vehicle, fired again. The second shooter stumbled, clutching his shoulder. Shaw moved fast, closing the distance and putting the wounded shooter down with 2 controlled shots. Silence, except for the fire alarm and water dripping from broken pipes. Shaw looked at Emily. "I thought you were medical only." "I lied." "Good." Shaw checked her operator, who was bleeding from a leg wound but conscious. "We need to move. This whole structure's unstable." They made it out through a secondary exit just as Canadian police and fire services arrived. The building was being evacuated, hundreds of residents pouring into the street in bathrobes and pajamas, confused and terrified. Daniels found them on the street corner 2 blocks away. His face was grim. Kuznetsov triggered the explosion remotely. He was never in that apartment. He wanted us to breach so he could take out the whole team. "But he didn't," Emily said, "because we got out. This time. Next time, we might not be so lucky." Daniels pulled out his phone, checking a message. "But there's not going to be a next time. Canadian intelligence just intercepted him at the airport. He was trying to board a private jet to Moscow. They have him in custody." Emily felt something shift in her chest. Relief, maybe. Or vindication. "It's over." "Not quite. He'll lawyer up, claim diplomatic immunity, drag this out for months. But his network's burned, his assets are compromised. He's done operating in the West." Daniels looked at her directly. "You did that. You and your refusal to back down." The flight back to the States was quiet. The wounded operator was stabilized and transferred to a Montreal hospital. Reeves had her leg stitched up by a local medic. The rest of the team was bruised and battered, but intact. Emily sat by herself near the back of the plane, watching the city lights disappear below, and tried to process everything that had happened in the last 72 hours. She'd been suspended, threatened, hunted, and nearly killed. She'd exposed a traitor, brought down an intelligence network, and stopped an assassination. And somehow, she'd survived. Reeves slid into the seat beside her. "You okay?" "Ask me tomorrow." "Fair." Reeves was quiet for a moment. "You know you don't have to take the federal job. You could still walk away. Find some quiet hospital in the middle of nowhere and just exist." "I tried that. It didn't work." "Why not?" Emily thought about it. "Because pretending to be something you're not is exhausting, and eventually the mask cracks. Mine cracked the moment that patients started crashing, and I knew Holloway was wrong. I could have stayed quiet, could have let it happen, but I didn't. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I'm not." Reeves smiled. "That's the most honest thing I've heard all week." They landed just after midnight, Daniels pulled Emily aside before she left the airfield. "Monday morning," he reminded her. "Don't be late." "I won't be." "And Carter? What you did tonight, going back into that garage, covering Shaw's team, that was above and beyond. You saved lives. Again." Emily shrugged. "It's what I do." She drove home through empty streets, exhaustion pulling at every muscle. Her apartment looked the same as she'd left it, sparse, temporary, unlived in. She'd never bothered to decorate because she'd never planned to stay. Now she didn't have to. She showered, scrubbing away the smoke and blood, and fell into bed. Sleep came fast, but it wasn't peaceful. She dreamed of Syria, of Mosul, of hospitals on fire and patients she couldn't save, old ghosts that never really left. She woke at 6 a.m. to her phone buzzing. News alert, breaking, International Intelligence Network dismantled. Federal agents arrest Russian operative Viktor Kuznetsov in Montreal. The story was everywhere. Cable news, social media, international press. Kuznetsov's photo was plastered across every screen, his network exposed, his assets frozen. And buried in the third paragraph of every article, the breakthrough came after former combat medic Emily Carter exposed corruption at Riverside General Hospital, leading to the arrest of Dr. Marcus Holloway and the unraveling of Kuznetsov's operation. Her phone started ringing. Reporters. Again. Interview requests. Again. Someone wanted to option her life story for a movie. Emily turned off the phone and made coffee. Saturday passed in a blur. She slept, packed, threw away everything she didn't need. The apartment had never felt like home, and leaving it behind was easier than she'd expected. Sunday morning, she drove to the cemetery. Her mother's grave was in the northwest corner, under an oak tree that provided shade in summer. Emily knelt in the grass, tracing her fingers over the engraved name, Margaret Louise Carter, beloved mother, 1964 to 2023. "I'm sorry I wasn't here," Emily said quietly. "When you died, when you needed me. I was overseas doing what I thought mattered, and I missed everything." The wind rustled through the oak leaves. A bird sang somewhere nearby. "But I think I finally understand what you tried to tell me before I enlisted. That running toward danger doesn't make you brave. That real courage is standing still and facing the hard stuff. The grief, the loneliness, the fear that you're not enough." Emily's throat tightened. "I spent 3 years hiding, trying to be normal. But I'm not normal, and I'm done apologizing for it." She placed fresh flowers on the grave, white lilies, her mother's favorite, and stood. "I'm going to be okay," she said. "I think you'd be proud of what I did, even if it was messy, even if I broke a lot of rules." She managed a smile. "You always said I was stubborn. Turns out that's not always a bad thing." She walked back to her truck feeling lighter than she had in years. Monday morning arrived cold and bright. Emily dressed in business casual, slacks, button-down shirt, blazer, professional but not corporate. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The last time she'd worn anything like this, she'd been burying her mother. Now she was starting over. The federal building downtown was all glass and granite, security checkpoints and badge scanners. Daniels met her in the lobby. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be." They took the elevator to the 5th floor. The offices were open concept, glass partitions and modern furniture. People in suits and tactical gear working side by side. Screens displaying maps, data feeds, intelligence reports. Daniels led her to a conference room where a woman in her 50s was waiting. Silver hair, sharp eyes, the bearing of someone who'd spent decades making life and death decisions. "Emily Carter, meet Director Patricia Morrison. She runs the Medical Operations Division." Morrison stood and offered her hand. "I've read your file. Impressive doesn't begin to cover it." "Thank you, ma'am." "Don't thank me yet. This job will test you in ways combat never did. No clear enemies, no front lines, just impossible decisions and bureaucratic nightmares." Morrison's expression softened slightly. "But if anyone can handle it, it's you. Welcome to the team." The paperwork took 2 hours. Background checks, security clearances, benefits enrollment, endless NDAs. By the time Emily signed the last form, her hand was cramping. Daniel showed her to her office, small but private, with a window overlooking the city. There was a desk, a computer, and a phone. Nothing personal yet, just potential. Your first assignment starts Wednesday, Daniel said. We're embedding medical support with a joint task force in Eastern Europe. High risk, high reward. Interested? Emily looked out the window at Riverside spread below. Somewhere down there, nurses were starting their shifts. Doctors were making rounds. Patients were fighting for every breath. And she was up here, about to step into a world where her skills actually mattered, where speaking up was expected instead of punished, where being excellent wasn't a threat to fragile egos. I'm interested, she said. That evening, Emily returned to Riverside General one final time. Not to work, not to confront anyone, just to say goodbye to the people who'd mattered. She found Kevin in the ER break room, eating vending machine chips and looking exhausted. You came back, he said. Just for a minute. Kevin set down the chips. I'm putting in my notice. Found a job at a clinic in the suburbs. Slower pace, better hours, no armed assaults. Good for you. You think I'm running away. I think you're doing what's right for you. That's all anyone can do. Emily sat down across from him. You're a good nurse, Kevin. Don't let this place make you forget that. His eyes went red. I froze, during the attack. When the shooting started, I just froze. While you were fighting, I was hiding in a supply closet. That's called being human. You didn't freeze. I've had more practice being terrified. Emily leaned forward. Fear doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart. The trick is knowing when to let it protect you and when to move anyway. Kevin nodded slowly. What you did, exposing Holloway, stopping those guys, all of it, that took guts I don't have. You have them. You just haven't needed them yet. And maybe you never will. Maybe you'll spend the rest of your career at that suburban clinic helping people in quiet ways. That's just as valuable as what I did. You really believe that? I do. They hugged briefly, awkwardly, and Emily left him there with his chips and his choices. She found Shanice in the parking lot, getting into her car after a double shift. When Shanice saw her, she stopped. Please tell me you're not here to work a shift, Shanice said. I'm here to say thank you for having my back, for believing in me when nobody else did. Shanice's face crumpled. Girl, don't make me cry in this parking lot. Too late. They held each other while the sun set behind the hospital, painting everything gold and orange, and for a moment it felt like maybe all the pain and chaos had been worth something. You're going to do amazing things, Shanice said. I always knew it. From the first day you started here, I could tell you were different, special. I'm not special. I just refuse to quit. That's what makes you special, dummy. Shanice wiped her eyes. Now go. Get out of here before I fall apart completely. Emily drove away from Riverside General for the last time. She didn't look back. 3 months later, Emily stood in a forward operating base outside Pristina, Kosovo, coordinating medical evacuations for a joint NATO exercise. She'd been in country for 6 weeks, working 20-hour days, sleeping in a tent, living on MRIs and bad coffee. And she'd never been happier. The work was brutal but purposeful. Every decision mattered. Every skill she'd honed in Syria and Iraq was being used. She was operating at the edge of her abilities and loving every exhausting minute. Her phone buzzed, a rare luxury in the field. Email from Daniels with a news article attached. Thought you'd want to see this. D. The headline read, Former Riverside General Doctor sentenced to 15 years in federal espionage case. Below it, a photo of Holloway in an orange jumpsuit, looking 20 years older than the last time she'd seen him. The article detailed his conviction on 17 counts including conspiracy, espionage, and accessory to attempted murder. His medical license had been permanently revoked, his pension seized, his reputation destroyed. The hospital had settled multiple lawsuits and undergone complete administrative overhaul. Janet Kowalski had resigned. The CEO had been fired. New leadership was implementing sweeping reforms, and buried at the end. The case broke open after whistleblower Emily Carter, now a federal medical operations coordinator, exposed Holloway's activities. Carter's actions have been credited with preventing multiple casualties and dismantling an international intelligence network. Emily deleted the email and went back to work. That night, sitting outside her tent under a sky filled with more stars than she'd ever seen in the city, Reeves found her. You okay? Reeves asked. Yeah, just thinking. About what? About how I spent 3 years trying to be invisible, trying to convince myself that keeping my head down and following orders was enough, and how miserable I was. Emily looked up at the stars. I thought leaving the service would fix me, that I could become someone different, someone normal. But you can't unbecome who you are. No, you can't. Emily smiled. And honestly, I don't want to anymore. I'm good at this. The crisis management, the high-stakes decisions, the controlled chaos. I was made for it. Trying to be anything else was just lying to myself. Reeves sat down beside her. For what it's worth, I'm glad you stopped lying. The world needs people like you. People who don't back down when it matters. The world needs all kinds of people. The ones who fight, and the ones who heal, and the ones who just show up every day and do their best. I'm not better than them. I'm just different. Different in a way that saves lives. Emily didn't argue. She'd learned that sometimes accepting your own value wasn't arrogance. It was survival. 6 months after that, Emily was back stateside for a 3-week leave. She drove through Riverside, past the hospital, past her old apartment, past the cemetery where her mother rested. She ended up at a coffee shop near the university, sitting by the window with a laptop and a latte, catching up on reports. A woman approached her table, young, mid-20s, nervous energy. "Excuse me, are you Emily Carter?" Emily looked up. "Yeah. I'm sorry to bother you. I'm a nursing student, first year, and I read about what you did at Riverside General, standing up to that doctor, exposing the corruption." The young woman's eyes were bright with something Emily recognized. Hope, maybe, or determination. It inspired me to not just accept things the way they are, to speak up when I see something wrong. Emily set down her coffee. "What's your name?" "Ashley." "Sit down, Ashley." The young woman sat, clutching her textbook like a lifeline. "You want to know the truth?" Emily said. "Speaking up is hard. It'll cost you jobs, friendships, opportunities. People will hate you for making them look bad. Systems will punish you for disrupting their comfort. And most of the time, you'll wonder if it's worth it." Ashley's face fell. "So I didn't say that. I said it's hard. But hard doesn't mean wrong." Emily leaned forward. The world is full of people who see problems and stay quiet, who know something's broken but don't want to risk fixing it. And you know what happens? People die. Systems rot. Corruption spreads. Because good people decided their comfort mattered more than someone else's life. But what if I'm wrong? What if I speak up and I'm making a mistake? Then you own it, you learn from it, and you do better next time. But you know what's worse than being wrong? Being silent when you know you're right. Emily finished her coffee. You're going to be a nurse. That means you're going to see things that are unjust, unsafe, unethical. And when you do, you'll have a choice. Stay quiet and keep your job, or speak up and sleep at night. Neither choice is easy, but only one is honest. Ashley nodded slowly. How do you know when it's worth the risk? You don't. You just decide what kind of person you want to be and act accordingly. Emily stood, gathering her laptop. But here's what I learned. You can't control how systems respond to you. You can only control whether you compromise who you are to make them comfortable. And I'd rather be unemployed and honest than employed and ashamed. She left the coffee shop and walked to her truck, her phone buzzing with a new assignment notification. High-risk medical support operation in the Mediterranean. Departure in 72 hours. She accepted it without hesitation, because this was who she was. Not a woman who'd been silenced, not a nurse who'd been underestimated, not someone who apologized for taking up space. She was Emily Carter, combat medic, federal agent, whistleblower, survivor. Someone who'd been told to stay in her lane and had chosen instead to burn the whole road down. And she was just getting started. 2 years later, Emily stood at a podium in front of 300 medical students at a conference on healthcare ethics. She'd been invited to speak about accountability, advocacy, and standing up to institutional corruption. She didn't prepare remarks. She just told the truth. "I was fired once for trying to save a patient's life," she began. "Actually, suspended first. But the message was clear. Shut up, follow orders, don't question authority. And for about 10 minutes, I considered doing exactly that, keeping my head down, playing it safe." She paused, looking out at the audience. Young faces, bright with possibility, not yet beaten down by bureaucracy and burnout. But then I asked myself, what's the point of having knowledge if you don't use it? What's the point of seeing problems if you don't try to fix them? What's the point of being in a position to help if you prioritize your comfort over someone else's life? Someone in the front row was taking notes. Others were leaning forward, engaged. So I didn't stay quiet. I challenged a doctor who was wrong. I exposed a hospital that was corrupt. I refused to accept that my role as a nurse meant I had to be invisible. And you know what happened? I lost my job. I was threatened. I was hunted. I nearly died. Emily smiled. But I also saved lives. I stopped a terrorist network. I brought down a system that was poisoning healthcare from the inside. And I became someone I'm actually proud of. She gripped the podium. I'm not telling you to be reckless. I'm not saying consequences don't matter. But I'm saying this. If you go into medicine planning to keep your head down and never make waves, you're already failing. Because healthcare needs people who will fight for what's right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The applause started before she finished. It built and built, filling the auditorium, and Emily stood there feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Validation. Not from institutions or authority figures, from people who'd chosen to listen, to believe, to care. After the conference, a dozen students approached her with questions. Emily answered every one, giving them her email, encouraging them to reach out if they ever needed advice or support. As she was leaving, an older woman stopped her in the hallway. Distinguished, gray-haired, wearing a medical school administrator's badge. That was a powerful speech, the woman said, though I imagine some of my colleagues found it challenging. Good, the woman laughed. I'm Dean Morrison. I run the medical ethics program here, and I'd like to offer you a position as a guest lecturer. Come in twice a semester, talk to students about real-world applications of medical ethics. No bureaucracy, no restrictions, just honest conversation. Emily considered it. I'd need full freedom to speak my mind. I wouldn't have it any other way. Then I'm in. They shook hands, and Emily walked out of the building into bright afternoon sunshine. Her phone buzzed, Daniel's, with details on her next deployment. A humanitarian crisis in East Africa that needed medical coordination. She responded with 2 words, I'm ready. Because she was. Ready for the next crisis, the next challenge, the next fight worth having. Emily Carter had spent years being told she wasn't enough. Wasn't experienced enough, credentialed enough, important enough. She'd been dismissed, suspended, threatened, hunted. And she'd survived it all. Not because she was perfect, not because she never doubted or struggled or broke down in parking lots at 3 a.m. questioning every choice she'd ever made. But because when it mattered, when lives were on the line and systems were failing and everyone else was looking away, she'd refuse to be quiet. She'd refuse to accept that her worth was determined by someone else's comfort. She'd refuse to believe that keeping her job was more important than keeping her integrity. And in the end, that refusal had saved more lives than she could count. As she drove away from the medical school, Emily thought about the young nursing student from the coffee shop. About the hundreds of medical students who'd heard her speak today. About all the people out there right now facing impossible choices between safety and honesty. She hoped they'd choose honesty. Not because it was easy, not because it guaranteed success, but because the world needed people who would stand up even when standing up meant standing alone. People who understood that real strength wasn't about never being afraid. It was about being terrified and moving forward anyway. People like Emily Carter, who'd been just a nurse until the moment she became everything.